Morning, Mary. Good to see you.
Hi, nice to see you.
How are you managing with the cocooning?
Not well. I don't like being cocooned, but I'm trying to get out of it by virtual escape.
And thanks for talking to me this morning about my book.
Yeah, it's coming out on the 16th of April.
Yeah, so we're going to plow ahead with the publication on the 16th of April, and people will be able to buy it online and have it delivered until we get back up and running, and then they can go get it in their local shop.
Well, having had a book that came out, only a couple of years ago, Climate Justice, I can't believe how galling and frustrating it must be, but you're right. If you can get it out virtually well, people will be delighted to buy it.
Yeah, no, and I was looking at your book and my book last night and just thinking that they're a nice complementarity. Your book is looking at the climate justice in the international context and what we need to do to help people right around the world. Whereas mine is focused in this instance on the individual actions that everybody can take to be part of the systemic change we need to create.
But your book is extraordinarily relevant because we're all being asked to do things now to help to lower the curve to save lives. And people are literally engaged in what can we do to save old people like me and lives generally, and hospital staff and frontline defenders and so on. And people's agency has never been so invoked. And your book is all about that. It's amazing.
Do you get asked a lot about the power of the individual in the context of a global crisis like climate?
Very much so. And as you know, I've always believed that everyone can make a difference. You remember my memoir, Everybody Matters. Everybody can make a difference. We can all do our bit, but never since I was born have we been asked to have that agency so directly related to our future. And that's what your book is all about.
Well, I hope that the book is a mix of, good, well-researched information and practical actions that people can take on everything from cling film in their mobile phone to their garden shed and how they look after their pets. So that's what I hope we can help everybody to find something to do.
That's what I remember when you worked with me in the Foundation for Climate Justice. You were always, we had to be true to the science, but also very practical, because otherwise we weren't going to affect people's lives.
Tell me, are there changes that you've made in your life that you think can inspire others to make individual changes? Are there small things about your house that you've gone about changing?
Well, the main thing I did was to become a pescatarian, to give up eating meat. And that cost me a little bit because I was a meat eater, and Nick has become a flexitarian, my husband, because he eats less meat because we're only cooking for the two of us. And so it makes sense. But I find that I'm using much less waste, trying to, first of all, separate more rigorously than I was, trying to get rid of plastics altogether. I have my water thing, and it's actually a nice size, and people envy me because it fits easily into my handbag. I think they make the water, what do you call them? Water
bottles.
Water bottles far too big. We need smaller ones that are handy for people to bring around. But now I'm at home, so it doesn't make that much difference.
I know, yeah, it changes a lot. It'll be interesting to see whether overall, I think the staying at home will reduce our carbon footprint, obviously.
Yes.
We're traveling less, we're commuting less. But I haven't been to a supermarket in over 2 weeks, but I noticed that from what people are saying, vegetables and fruit are all being packaged again in plastic. You can't use a keep cup if you're getting a coffee. So I hope I realize that it's necessary to do that in light of the pandemic, but I hope we can go back to the habits we were creating around being able to buy things loose and with less plastic on them in the future.
Yeah, I haven't been for a while, and I was actually noting the opposite, that supermarkets were beginning to get rid of the plastic, and we were welcoming that. So I definitely hope they don't go back.
Mm-hmm. Mary, we talk a lot at the moment in this time that's quite tough around hope and optimism. And we've had many conversations, you and I, about the need to always stay hopeful in light of the crises that face us, because hope keeps us going. How hopeful do you feel at the moment about the interrelated kind of global challenges that are out there?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I'm working now a little bit virtually with women leaders, and we've had a few sessions now. We'll have another big one for the Skoll Foundation on the climate issue, trying to learn lessons from COVID-19 that are relevant to how we address the climate crisis. Because I'm very conscious that on the 10th of March, which is not very long ago, launching the UN assessment of emissions for 2019, the Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that we were way off the mark, I've forgotten what he used, but way off where we should be. And he was desperately worried. Now, he was right to be worried. Now we have a more immediate threat, and we are changing our behavior. We are changing our habits. We are doing things. And also, we're becoming more neighborly. Communities are helping. People are using their imagination and their innovation to create ventilators, never created ventilators before, and so on, and masks. And there's a real sense that we're all in this together. If we can get that spirit into the longer term, but still short enough term crisis of climate, the climate emergency, then I will be much more hopeful. In fact, funnily enough, I've been more hopeful in the last few weeks in the middle of this severe, desperate crisis that we're in, where people are losing their lives, families are grieving, families are worrying, families are coping, women are coping with domestic violence much more than they had in the past. And yet, this is a reminder of the bigger crisis that we have not been willing to face.
Another thing that strikes me is we've talked a lot over the years about the need for solidarity and countries to act in enlightened self-interest in the face of the climate crisis, when I think we're starting to see a little bit of how that can play out now in terms of the current COVID-19 crisis. Do you think we'll be able to have stronger multilateralism on the other side of this?
That's a really important question, and I'm not sure of it. What we are seeing is countries looking after themselves very dramatically in the richer parts of the world, and even in the United States, states fighting for ventilators and fighting with FEMA, the federal agency, fighting with one another instead of being together. And they know they should be more together. So I'm glad that in Ireland and a lot of countries that they are at least working together. But the European Union should be more, giving example of togetherness. Having, relatives in South Africa, I'm very conscious of the shock and horror there where they've had lockdown. People can't afford to be out of their work because their work is their food. And it's so much worse. So in a way, this COVID-19 crisis may remind us that the world is interconnected, and that if we don't address the problem of the refugee camps, of the people who are in congested places that are very poor, then we won't be able to get over on top of this virus. So I'm hoping that there will be more sense of multilateral support, but as yet, I haven't quite seen it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One more question more related to the book. Amongst your peers of your age group, do you think some of the frugality that you guys grew up with, that was influenced from like a post-war Ireland, post-World War, do you think some of that kind of frugality and a desire not to waste is a helpful attribute to have now? And in terms of living more sustainably?
Yeah, I think it is. Even before we were in this current COVID-19 crisis, when I was speaking and promoting the book or just speaking to audiences, as I tended entirely to do on the climate crisis, I would say when I was growing up, we learned to darn, we learned to sew. My brothers used hand-me-down clothes right down to my youngest brother. So he'd had 3 brothers before him wearing the same clothes and so on. And we mended things. And we, I would say we don't need this throwaway society. We don't need, children don't need toys that they then get bored with and throw away. We should be much more inventive about encouraging them to make things, encouraging them to use their imagination. Now that we're all homebound, I think these lessons are ones that we can really learn. And your book's all about that.